In December of 1993, Officer Martin Ganz was on patrol when he pulled over a car for a simple traffic violation. As he went to make contact with the driver, shots rang out, and as Officer Ganz tried to retreat, the driver followed him, executing him behind his police cruiser. An investigation followed, and although investigators were certain they had the right man, a lack of evidence prevented an arrest from being made. A few months later, though, the man struck again, and justice was finally found in the murder of Officer Martin Ganz. All right, you guys, we've got a really sad one. They're all really sad, but you know, there are elements of this that feel especially sad. And I do want to give before we get started, a hey girl, thanks to Mark for writing this one up and also for, I guess, for requesting it. I don't see a name for the request, so hey girl, thanks. All right, for today's episode, we are going to go to California, specifically Manhattan Beach. Manhattan Beach got its start way back in the early 1900s as a seaside getaway, and it looks beautiful. It looks like classic, like vintage, like retro, like I want to go to there, okay? And back then it was all about that retro vacation feel. Imagine families and friends heading out for like weekend escapes, complete with picnics on the sand and leisurely strolls along the shore. Over time, what began as a seasonal retreat slowly kind of transformed just into a full-fledged town where you could just live all the time. And if I could, do that, I would do that. It looks like a great place to live. That blend of old school charm and modern life still shows up in the local architecture and their community events. At the heart of Manhattan Beach is, of course, the beach itself. The long sandy stretch is a magnet for surfers, beach volleyball players, and anyone who wants to kick back and just listen to the sound of the waves. Even for people who don't love the beach, which you are free to do that. I think you're wrong, but you're free to do that. But even if you don't love the beach, there's something soothing about watching the tide roll in and out. That connection to nature is a big part of what draws people. There's always a reminder that life's about balancing work with a little downtime, and sometimes you need to relax. What was it? My doctor prescribed vitamin C. Like you get it, like C, like the ocean. You see? Oh, you see? Okay, all right. I'm done. My kids would appreciate that. For many, living there isn't just about the location, it's about being part of a community that appreciates the beauty of the coastal area that they live in. And of course, no place is without its challenges. While the stunning coastal views are a big draw, they also come with some real issues. For example, coastal erosion is a constant concern, and maintaining a balance between development and environmental care is an ongoing conversation among locals and city planners. Plus, as more people discover what makes Manhattan Beach so special, rising real estate prices and the cost of living can create their own set of hurdles for longtime residents. We experience that here in Middle Tennessee as well. All the California people are wanting to come over here, which I get. But also, like, maybe not so many because real estate is insane here. It's insane. So, we know how you feel over there. It's a bit of a balancing act, keeping the community affordable and accessible while also preserving the natural beauty that makes the area so desirable. And one of the more interesting aspects of Manhattan Beach is how the town manages growth without losing its natural charm. City planners work to ensure that new developments don't spoil the scenic beauty of the coast while still providing modern amenities for the residents. There's a strong focus on sustainable planning here, with efforts aimed at protecting the coastline from overdevelopment and environmental degradation. This focus on sustainability is not just for show either, it's a practical necessity. With the Pacific Ocean right at its doorstep, Manhattan Beach has to deal with the realities of nature, from weather changes to erosion. The community's proactive approach in addressing these issues is one of the many ways that residents work together to keep their town thriving. Now, beyond the beach and the community spirit, Manhattan Beach also has a thriving scene when it comes to food, art, and culture. Local cafes, casual eateries, and a handful of upscale restaurants offer a taste of the area's diverse culinary scene. Art and culture are woven into the fabric of the town as well, from local art shows and community fairs to small independent boutiques showcasing handmade goods. There's an unmistakable creative energy that seems to resonate as you walk through the town. It's a place where people appreciate the arts in everyday life, and that's reflected in everything from the murals around town to the impromptu performances on the boardwalk. Whether you're a lifelong local or someone who's just passing through, the human element here is undeniable. And people talk about the place not just because it's beautiful, but because it's filled with memories. Summer days spent at the beach, late night chats over bonfires, and the simple joy of living in a community that values connection. I bet you guys weren't expecting me to cry this early, but this reminds me. So we go to the beach a couple times a year with the boys. Every year. And I certainly didn't grow up that way. We went to the beach twice in the first like 21 years of my life, maybe 25 years of my life. And so it's definitely different. We go to the beach a lot. We go once with family and then once with some friends that we love dearly and kind of raising our kids together and that kind of thing. Anyway, the other morning, I'm going to put the boys in the car to get ready for school. And it was really warm that morning. It was actually going to storm really bad that night, but like they didn't realize that's why it was so warm. But it was sunny when we went out and we're going to get in the car. And they were just like, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. This reminds me of beach mornings when we go to the beach and we sit out on the patio. And then they both got like teary-eyed about it. And they were like, I really miss the beach. I love the mornings there and I love the nights there. And just like they were literally admiring the beauty that you experience at the beach. And it was so sweet. And I was like, you guys, should we just move to the beach? Like, because if my kids want to, I'll do it. Like, I'll do it. I will do it. Andrew has to stay here. I can do this anywhere. You know what I'm saying? Just kidding. We would miss him. But it was so sweet. And I was like, oh, I just love the beach. Manhattan Beach isn't just a postcard perfect coastal town. It's a dynamic community with a lot of character. From its early days as a seaside resort to its current status as a bustling residential area, the town embodies the spirit of Southern California living. It's a place where the natural beauty of the ocean meets the everyday challenges of urban growth and sustainability, as stunning views meet a down-to-earth community vibe. This honestly just sounds like... Mark, do you work for Manhattan Beach real estate or like the tourism department? And you're like, visit Manhattan Beach because I want to go there and I want to move there. Those are the things that I want to do right now. Number 1 and number 2 on my list, go there, live there. That's it. List over. All right. But we say all that to say that Manhattan Beach is where today's case takes place. And it's not a Mark case unless he tells us all about the town, and I love learning about them. All right, now we're going to talk about Officer Martin Ganz. So while there is a little bit out there regarding his early life, there's not a ton. Martin was born in July of 1964. And remember, this case happens in the early 90s, so it's been quite a while. The Orange County native graduated from Garden Grove High School, and from a very early age, he wanted to do one thing, and that was to be a police officer. And when people talk about Martin's life, they all generally describe him the same way. They paint a picture of a hardworking young man who had the world in front of him. He had a great sense of humor with an infectious laugh, and he was extremely intelligent. Martin graduated from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Academy and began to work with the Manhattan Beach Police Department in 1988. Timothy Zins, a close friend, said that Martin was just like a full throttle kind of guy. He was very much a go-getter. Now, at this time, Martin was engaged to a young woman named Pamela. She laughed when she talked about how he proposed. She said it wasn't exactly a proposal. There wasn't a get down on one knee and will you marry me and this big grand thing. She said they were literally at the Manhattan Beach PD Christmas party. It was December of 1993. So they were only engaged for a few weeks when he was killed. It's just so sad. So they're at this Christmas party. They are slow dancing. And she says he just looks down at her and he's like, we're going to get married, right? And she was like, yeah. And That was it. They were like, we are now engaged. Oh, we are now engaged. That's it. But it's really, I don't know, it was really sweet. She talked, just the way she talked about it was so sweet. She recalls that he was always busy. He always had something going on, whether it was for himself or if he was just pitching in helping someone else out. But it never felt like he didn't have time to talk with people. And Pam says if he was talking to you, it was like you were the most important person in the world. He was very good at being present, being focused, and prioritizing you and his time with you. And she said no matter what kind of interaction you were having with him, like you're getting all of him when you're talking with him, which is incredible. We could all do better with that, especially in the age of smartphones and everything. It's like I catch myself doing this all the time. Like last night we had super bad weather. Well, we were supposed to. We got very lucky exactly where we are, and the line just sort of like this was the line of weather, and we were like right here, and it just the whole way, like it never got really bad here, thankfully. But I remember last night I was talking to my kids and I felt really bad because I kept checking the weather because I get very, very, very anxious about weather. And I kept looking to see if anything had changed because there was going to be possibly like one line coming in early and then we weren't supposed to get the rest until overnight, but there was like going to be some possibly pop-up stuff and did I need to get their helmets on? Do we need to get in our safe space? Whatever. So I kept like checking that and I'm like, they probably are like, she doesn't pay attention to me. Like, I felt so bad. So I don't know. Just hearing that about Martin is like, that's something we could definitely all work on, especially with the way that the world is now. And one of the aspects of his job that Martin loved the most was the impact that he could have on young people. So he was a youth mentor and an active participant in the DARE program. And he actually, you guys, he created his own coloring book using the Woody the Woodpecker character to educate children on seatbelt safety. So they could color it. It's so sweet. And he even invented a device called a sight right, which allowed motorcycle officers to carry an electronic handheld version of the vehicle code book with them so they could get it right. That is so admirable. Like, it just really sucks when you learn all these wonderful things about victims and you're like, and then when you find out why he's gone, it's so senseless. And like, are you kidding me right now? Like, literally, are you kidding me? So on December 27th, 1993, 2 days after Christmas, Pam got a phone call from Martin. He would often call her while he was on shift, like just to check in. That night, they had originally had plans, but Martin asked her if they could cancel them that night. He was going to do a ride along with his nephew. Don was 12 years old, and Martin told her that it was a pivotal time in his, life. He's a young man, and he's at a very impressionable age. He could fall in with the wrong crowd. He could be easily swayed by friends to kind of go down the wrong path. So he wanted to show him what some of those decisions could lead to and really spend some quality time with him, kind of showing him what he does on the job. And I'm sure as a 12-year-old kid, he's like, that is freaking awesome. I want to ride in a cop car and like go, catch the bad guys and all that stuff. So Martin usually was not in a squad car. He was this night because of the ride along, but normally he was a motorcycle officer and he loved every minute of being on a bike. But obviously he can't put his nephew on the back of a bike, not very safe, so squad car for the night. Pam says that when they talked briefly that night, Martin told her that he'd gone down to the pier and took some pictures. It was a pretty quiet night, and so he was trying to find some things to do with Dawn. So like that way he wasn't just super bored and they're just sitting in the car. They gave each other their love, and Pam says that's the last time that she talked to him. During his shift, Martin initiated several traffic stops for different violations, going through the process with Don, showing his nephew how to use the police radio, which, thank goodness he showed him how to do that. Also on shift that night was Tim Zins, Martin's friend. A little after 11 p.m., Tim was a few miles away from the uncle and nephew when the police radio was filled with screaming. And you guys, I watched an Oxygen show called Real Life LA Murders, I think. It's an Oxygen thing. And the police radio call I'm getting chills thinking about it. It was so heartbreaking. It was absolutely heartbreaking. So the screaming comes on the radio and you can't understand anything that this person is saying. And it sounds like, at first I thought it was a woman, which I was like, well, who would that be? It wasn't. But at first you couldn't really tell what was going on, but there was obviously something very wrong, right? Because you're not normally going to hear screaming like that over a police radio. So they didn't know who it was. They didn't know what was going on. Nobody had radio that they were about to make a stop, but they were making a stop. So they didn't know like where they needed to head to. But then a woman came on and said they needed help at the mall immediately. So Zin's was actually like right around the corner from there. So he heads there first and he found Martin on the ground behind his patrol car, bleeding profusely from a gunshot wound. And Don was out there just screaming, "My uncle's been shot. My uncle's been shot. Please help him." 12-year-old kid had to watch his uncle be gunned down. Insane. So the exact events of what led to this are not known, but we can piece together a general sequence of events from different media reports and law enforcement documents. So what follows is what investigators believe happened that night. Right around 11 p.m., Martin observed a gray or silver two-door hatchback car, a Daihatsu Charade, never heard of such, stop well past the painted lines of a stop sign and crosswalk. He hit the lights, he pulls the car over, and the driver pulled into the lot of the Manhattan Village Mall, which is next to a Bank of America. When I tell you, bank security cameras never work. Never work. And it's so unfortunate, but these worked. They never work. And these worked. In 1993, they worked. So the only caveat to they worked is they weren't like running like video cameras. They took pictures every 14 seconds. So they did get a glimpse of the car as it pulled over, but they could only get it was kind of like the front panel of the car. They didn't get the license plate. They didn't get any of that. So they see just kind of a portion of the car. Anyway, once he stopped, Martin gets out of his car. He approaches the vehicle. He leaves Don in the cruiser. He did not know that the man in the car, Roger Brady, was a career criminal with a history of drug use and felony robbery. Brady was on supervised release from a federal prison and should not be in possession of a firearm. But that didn't stop him. He still had a semi-automatic .380 caliber handgun. As Martin approached, Brady pointed the gun at him and just fired. The shot struck him in his upper chest and passed through his right arm, making it difficult for him to return fire. And one of the detectives said that was his gun hand. So, like, she was like, I think that's why he never pulled his gun and did anything back. Like, it kind of took the use of his arm out. And so he turned around and he tried to retreat back to his car. But the man gets out of his car and chases him. And then he fires again. He gets Martin in the back, but the bullet lodged in his bulletproof vest. And then Martin goes to get behind the police cruiser where the man comes up and rushes him. And as Martin laid on the ground, Brady stood over him and fired directly into his face just below his left eye. It was like right there. Hearing the gunshots, Don ducked down, and witnesses at the mall say that after shooting Martin, Brady walked to the driver's side of the patrol car, leaned down for a few moments before walking back to his car and speeding away. And Don said that at one point, like when the guy was still standing in front of the car, after I think he'd shot the first, maybe the second time, he had the gun pointed directly at the windshield, and he said he was like making eye contact with me, and he ducked down again, and thankfully he never opened fire on Don. Can you imagine? Oh my gosh. Now, Zins was the first officer to arrive on the scene, but there were witnesses who had come up to help render aid. The wounds that Martin had, though, were just too much for him to overcome. He was quickly rushed to the hospital, but he did die due to the gunshots. And they said, I also watched an interview actually with, so one of the police officers who was interviewed in this show, his name is Tim Hagman. Okay. Also, everybody's name in Manhattan Beach is Tim, except for apparently Martin, because Tim Zins was a police officer. One of the people from the task force is named Tim. Tim Hagman was a police officer with him, and he did an interview with the first responder that got to the scene who rendered aid to Officer Ganz. And guess what his name is Tim. But anyway, I was just like, how many Tims are in this town? But he said that rendering aid to him was especially difficult. He needed to be intubated. He was struggling to breathe, and he was unable to intubate him because of how much bleeding there was. And Tim Zinn said that he was like choking on his blood. Just really, really awful stuff. Around 1 a.m., Pam's phone rang, which is something that wasn't completely out of the ordinary because Martin would call in at various times of his shift to check in. So she's, like waking up and she's like, hello. But on the other end was one of Martin's sisters, and he had a bunch of sisters apparently. She was screaming, and Pam could barely make out, it's Martin. He's been shot. He's dead. And she said she immediately, went from being groggy to being like totally and completely awake. Within moments, she said police officers who worked with Martin were there at her doorstep. She was in disbelief. She couldn't make sense of what they were saying. And she kept saying, like, this can't be true. This can't be true. She said that she needed to go to the hospital. Take me to him. Let me sit with him. Let me hold his hand. Let me be there with him. And she said that I forget if it was an officer that she was talking to, but she said that one of the people that were either there or she talked to on the phone or something, she was like, let me see Martin. Let me be with Martin. Like, let me go to him. Like, let me see him. And she said, Pam, he's not Martin anymore. He's evidence. Let's get some bedside manner training stat, ma'am. That's her fiance. He's evidence to you. You don't say that to a grieving family member, loved one. That's his fiance. He's never going to just be evidence. Like, I could not believe that. Like, I understand that she was having a hard time with it sinking in, and for whatever reason, this woman wanted her to snap out of it. You don't have to say that. You don't have to say that. Like, that's terrible. And, she's like, 3 weeks ago, I got engaged to this man. I thought we were going to spend the rest of our lives together, and now he's gone. I just talked to him, like a traffic stop. A traffic stop. Investigators got the footage from the bank and another nearby bank, and they were able to determine the make and model of Brady's car and that there was damage to the front section of the car, but that was it. One of the cameras was situated in the drive-thru of the bank, and it showed in one photo Martin's police cruiser, and then in the next, Martin laying on the ground behind it. Because of that 14-second delay between photos, there was really little else that they could find. They interviewed witnesses and called in a sketch artist to talk with Don, the only one who got a look at Brady's face. Don was terrified that Brady would find him and kill him too if he talked to the police. That poor baby. They assured him that he was safe and that they would protect him. Don told them what happened with the traffic stop and the shooting, and then he worked with the artist to come up with a sketch, and they knew then that they were looking for an Asian male in his mid to late 20s with short dark hair. And his hair was a little wonky. It was short and it was dark, but it was wonky. They looked into DMV records for any registered owners of a Daihatsu Charade and discovered that there were 2,000 registered in Southern California. That's like a lot. I mean, I guess it's not nearly as much as like some other type of more popular vehicle, but still. A few days after the shooting, Martin was laid to rest. Martin was the first Manhattan Beach officer to be killed in the line of duty ever. His funeral was attended by more than 2,500 officers from surrounding areas. 2 weeks after Martin's murder, investigators hadn't been able to locate the man responsible, and at this point, the sketch was not made publicly available yet, out of fear that it would cause this man to flee. But they finally released the sketch to the public, and they asked, do you know this man? Have you seen him? Help us find him. There was an outpouring of tips coming in as the public wanted this case to be solved just as much as the police did. They ended up with over 2,000 tips over the course of this investigation. One train of thought was that the first time someone commits a crime, it's not likely to be gunning down a police officer in the middle of the street, okay? So they looked at tips that pointed them towards somebody who probably had a criminal past. This is not his first go-round, right? There were a handful of people that the detectives had set names aside to investigate further, and one was Roger Brady, described as an Asian male in his mid-20s with a prior history of bank robberies. A team was set up to surveil him, and they noticed he drove the same car they were looking for. They felt like Brady was their man, and they would soon be able to bring him to justice. They were like, look, it all fits. He matches the description. He's got the criminal history that we think somebody like this would have. They also theorized, because in that area at 11 o'clock at night, there was only one store open in the mall, and it was the Ralph's grocery store. So they thought the guy was going to rob the grocery store. He gets pulled over, and then he kills the police officer that pulls him over, because kind of like, where else would he be going in that area? Like, that was their theory. In late January, investigators actually go to his home and they talk with him, and he allowed them to search in the common areas and in his bedroom. He told them that the night of the shooting, he was at home watching TV. And at one point they were like, well, do you have like any other idea? Like, is that really all you got? And he was like, I don't know. I'll ask my mom later when she gets home. It was very nonchalant. He could not have been less chalant at all. Like, insane. During the search, though, they found no evidence that could link Brady to the shooting. They didn't find anything that ruled him out necessarily, but they didn't find anything that ruled him all the way in. They also searched his car, but they didn't find anything in there. They said there was nothing in his car. Like, almost like strangely so that there was like nothing in his car. So they get a photo of Roger Brady, and they do a photo lineup, and they show these photos to Dawn, but Dawn doesn't pick Brady. So they're like, okay, well, we don't really have anything else to go on. We don't have any other information. We didn't find any evidence on him. So like, he has the same car. He's also Asian, but like, that's it, So 8 months go by, no progress on this investigation. In August of 1994, Detective Leaf, who'd been leading the investigation, got a call from a police department in Oregon about a possible suspect. So they had an Asian man in his 20s, driving a Daihatsu Charade. He had robbed a supermarket, and he shot a woman in the process with a .380 caliber gun. The man was arrested, and the police in Oregon told Leaf that his name was Roger Brady. So they went to Oregon with a forensics expert, and they were able to definitely match the shell casings from that gun with the ones found at the scene of Martin's murder. The gun that Brady was arrested with was the gun that he had also used to kill Martin. Leaf says that it was beyond frustrating that they couldn't come up with enough evidence originally to arrest Brady. It would have prevented this robbery and shooting. And this is insane to me that this guy, okay, so apparently Roger Brady, again, he's in his mid-20s at this point. He had done well in school. He grew up in Orange County. I think he was living in Malibu with maybe he grew up in Malibu. Is Malibu in Orange County? I don't know. It's all fancy to me. But he was living in Malibu with his parents at the time. He worked at a gas station, I think there. No, a fast food restaurant. Anyway, he had always gotten good grades. He seemed to stay out of trouble. And then he gets to high school. He fell in with the wrong crowd kind of thing. he became addicted to cocaine. So he started his bank robberies to support his cocaine habit, which does happen. And he gets arrested and he goes to federal prison for these bank robberies, which, like, okay. And he was sentenced to like up to 20 years in prison for these. And you're like, okay. They paroled him in 3. So he had a parole officer and they talked to the parole officer. So when they started looking at names of people who had criminal records and all that kind of stuff, who they could talk to, they talked to the parole officer, and the parole officer is like, yeah, well, he just came in for like a routine like drug test or something, parole officer meeting. And they were like, well, what was he driving? And they're like, a Daihatsu Charade. Same color. Don thought it was gray or silver. It is. It's grayish silver, I would say. But he was paroled after 3 years. And I don't think that he killed anybody when he robbed the banks previously, but he always robbed them at gunpoint, from what I understand. Like, that's still a violent crime. And if you're bringing a gun with you, you're not doing that just for show. If they arrested him and it ended up being a fake gun, okay, then maybe you could make the argument that his intention was not ever to be violent with anyone, at least not using a gun. But that's not the case. So he was found with a real gun. He was not supposed to have any firearms after that. We know that doesn't stop anybody. So I'm just confused as to how they were like, you know what? Let's just let him go. Let's just let him go. So now what does he go back to? What does he do when he gets out? He goes right back to, I'm assuming, a drug habit, because what has changed for him? He goes right back to the same area he was at, probably the same friends he had before, probably the same environment he was in before, all of those things. So nothing really changed for him. It's not unheard of that he's going to go back to doing the same types of things. He does have a job, but that's not going to be enough if he's got an expensive cocaine habit, right? So he goes back to doing the same things that he's doing. And he kills Officer Ganz. Obviously, they don't know who it is. And I mean, they assigned a task force. They had tons of investigators on the case. More so, I think, than if it had been a civilian that had been killed. Just because, all of these officers were like, I want to join in. Like, I want to help. I want to, whatever. And they ended up contacting a defense contractor to help them like enhance that video from the bank, because it was really hard to tell. It was really blurry. Like, with the naked eye, you would have a really hard time figuring out what car it was. So they used the defense contractor to enhance that video, and they were able to determine that it was a Daihatsu Charade. But then he travels around and he's robbing grocery stores. And so when he leaves the store that he robs, there's a woman standing outside with her groceries bag. She's just gone shopping, and he shoots her multiple times and kills her. For what? Even if she did see you, the likelihood that you get caught, unless you get caught right then, is so low. He doesn't live in Oregon. He lives in California. And then the police had this other guy who had shot and killed a police officer in Torrance, California, in between these two. And so they think, okay, well, this has got to be our guy then. And so they go and they track this guy down, and then they can't match anything. His gun doesn't match. The bullets don't match. The vehicle doesn't match. Like, none of it matches. So there was just kind of like all of these things that were like, I don't know, almost like a perfect storm of keeping him out. Feels like a lot longer than he should have been, because, multiple people passed away, like, were taken senselessly. It's just awful. But this time they were able to get him. They were able to match the evidence that they needed. And Brady was convicted of killing Officer Martin Ganz, and he was sentenced to death, although that will likely not occur because Governor Gavin Newsom has banned the death penalty. Since Martin's death, Pam spent time healing and trying to move on with her life. She has since married and become a mother, but Martin still holds a place in her heart. And she said that every single year at the time that it happened, on the day that it happened, she goes to the place that it happened. And she said it doesn't matter if it's freezing, if it's raining, like whatever the weather is like, no matter what she's doing, she goes there. And she still gets emotional talking about it, and she's like, I can still tell people about him. I can share, what his heart was like and who he was as a person. And, at this point, he's been gone longer than he was ever alive. He was 29 when he died. And that was really, really hard for her, of course. I mean, that's just really tough. And it's like, that's the person she thought she was going to spend the rest of her life with. I can't imagine how difficult that was. But she does still, every single year, at least at the time that was recorded, that interview was recorded, she makes a point to go every single time, which is just so sweet. One of Martin's fellow officers paid tribute to him with a poem. It says, I saw a policeman cry today. A fellow officer had passed away. So full of life, so free and wild, he'd always stoop to help a child. He did his job, he did his best, he was equal to the test. I'll never know the reason why Officer Ganz had to die. But there is one thing that I am sure, I will stand at heaven's door. Ugh, this is getting me. And when that door is open wide, there'll be Marty by my side. I saw a policeman cry today. My friend Marty passed away. It's very simple, but it's very, it is moving. And to watch these officers be so vulnerable and emotional about it, when they talk about him, they still, obviously they still have a hard time with it, and this was somebody that was their friend. And to see him the way that they saw him, the first responder said that when he got there, he originally thought it was a different police officer. He said because of the trauma to his face, he didn't recognize him at first. When they were loading him up, he said something about who the officer's name that he thought it was. And they said, no, this is Marty. And he was like, oh my gosh, this is Marty? Like, he was like, it was difficult to tell who he was, which is also really awful. And another one of the police officers said that the department got him counseling. He said that the day after Marty passed away, he had 3 days off in a row or something. And they wanted him to go see a counselor. And he basically was like, I was a major butthole during that time. Like, he was like, I was awful. I was difficult to deal with. I didn't think I needed to be there. And he was like, and I did. I needed counseling. It was like, it took a long time for the PTSD to really like hit me. And like, for me to understand that I was having a hard time processing it. He was like, I had a lot of fear after that I would be killed. And of course the impact that would make on the other people in his life. And, he was like, I don't, I still went to work, I still did my job, but I don't think that I was pleasant to be around at all. And he's like, now I definitely see the need for the counseling and why they wanted me to do that, and this, this guy was young. I think he'd only been on the job a few years at that point, but, anyway. The whole thing's so sad. And then the nephew in the car, I was like, no. Oh my gosh, I cannot even imagine. I hope that kid, now a grown up, is okay. I mean, if he was 12 in 1993, he'd be what, in his 40s now. So hopefully he's okay. I can't imagine the trauma of watching that. And then as a child, the gunman looking at you. And for whatever reason, he decided not to pull the trigger, thank God. What a dickwad. I mean, for no reason. I guess he just didn't want to go back to jail. A tough titty, dude. Don't have a gun on you if you're not supposed to. Don't break laws. Don't break traffic, rules. If you so desperately cannot go back, then don't do the things that are going to get you to go back. Is that this guy's fault? You're driving crazy? Like, oh, it's just so terrible. So that's today's case. Let me know what you think about it. And yeah, I'll talk to you next week. Love you. Bye. If you like this episode, be sure to like this episode and follow the show so that you never miss out on new episodes. Get in on the conversation on Facebook and Instagram. You can find us at Killer Queens Pod, or you can join our Facebook discussion group at Killer Queens Podcast, where we discuss cases covered on the show and all things 90s. If you want to submit a case to be covered on the show, visit killerqueenspodcast.com/case submission and just complete the form. And if we cover the case, we'll give you a shout out on the show. Lilas.